Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our 2022 recap and our vision for 2023. It's been an exciting year. It's been a wild ride, 2022. I think every one of us can, in the state of Michigan, say for sure. It's been a crazy election year, and we've had some great wins. We've suffered some losses and some heartbreak, but we want to recap on the things that have happened in 2022. And then we also want to share with you some exciting things ahead that we see and that we are part of, conversations on the national level and things happening within our state for 2023. But first things first, I would like to introduce, obviously, Ron Armstrong, Stand Up Michigan president. Ron, you want to say hello?
Hello, and it's great to be with all of you, and we just look forward to you hearing both what it is we've accomplished in the past, but really what it is we need to do in the future, because that really is what matters today.
Yes, and then I also would like to introduce to you Danielle Gilbert. Danielle is our new Director of County Affiliates. She joined us in 2022 and is working very closely with Ron and I and the board to work with our county chapter leaders all across the state. So Danielle has been a wonderful blessing in addition to our team. Danielle, why don't you introduce yourself to our followers and our audience and let everybody know just a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here today. Like Tammy said, I joined the organization in 2022, about 8 months ago. My title is the Director of County Affiliates. I work directly with the county chapters across the state, facilitating them with their needs and offering them resources. I live in Macomb County, which is on the southeast side of Michigan, and I'm excited to be part of the group. I'm excited for this conversation today and looking forward.
And Danielle comes to us with a lot of experience in the political arena, and she's also very used to some of the drama that we deal with in the political arena. Danielle was the executive director of the Macomb County GOP before joining us, so she's got some experience. She's also a mom. You have one son, correct?
I do, yep. He's 8 years old.
Yep. So Danielle is a wife, a mom. She's experienced in this arena. And so she's just been a huge blessing. And we wanted to make sure that you all had a chance to meet our wonderful Danielle Gilbert. I'm sure you'll be hearing more from her as we move forward into 2023 as well. But first things first, with our recap, we're going to actually cover 2023 and some vision and some hope and some things that we want to share with you moving forward before we recap some of the successes and the things that have happened in 2022. So I'm going to pass it over to Ron as he gets into some vision and some encouragement and some hope and some of the things that we're anticipating for 2023.
You know, the one thing that we have had here at Stand Up Michigan, we've always said that this has been spirit-led from its foundation and its how we organized and what its purpose has been, and certainly what it is we've accomplished. And Tony, who was one of the first ones at one of the first meetings, and he'll always tell you he came for the food. It's kind of a fun story.
Yeah,
it really was. But he became an integral part of things. And over the last couple of years, he has always sent us a daily Bible verse. He's very involved in his church, but he has several groups that he sends these to on a daily basis. And this is the day we decided we were going to record this year-end message. And today's verse just struck me. And then I began to look into it a little deeper. And I want to share it with you because it really does, I think, give us what I hope to share with you today above all else. And that is James 1:3-4 says, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance, let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. I want to read that one more time. Because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance, let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. How that struck me was that it is so important. Our faith cannot be shaken by an outcome of, for instance, an election or a cycle. We have to live by faith regardless of what we see in front of us in current circumstance. You've heard us talk about saying that we're on a journey, and it's a journey and not a destination. We are not in this for one event, for one cause, for one election cycle, and our goals and our faith do not change based upon the outcomes of these. The power to choose freedom was given to us at the time of creation. That promise, that power, that ability to choose freedom was also written down by our forefathers and given to us in our Constitution. But the promise, however, comes from God and will stay with us until he returns or until the end of time. Our strategy will change, our short-term and our long-term goals as well, but we cannot look at circumstances, not current circumstances, and allow those to determine our fate. We must continue on a path of faith and of works so that those who follow us have the knowledge and the experience and the example set forth by us to do the same until either God returns or until the end of time. I share that with you because I believe that that message is the main one for us to hear, not only as we exit 22 into this next year, but as you exit each year or each situation that you go through, knowing that our faith is not wavered because we know the truth hasn't changed. It is a frame of mind and a choice, and that is the reason that we have decided that the Choose Freedom Initiative is really important. We'll talk about that again later. But now we're going to review 2022 to understand, for all of you to embrace the successes that we had as well as the challenges to be able to help us move forward in 2023.
Yeah, so let's start. We're going to just kind of recap our year, starting at the beginning of the year. So in January of 2022, we were contacted, and I'll let Ron get into some of the details of this, but we were contacted as leaders in the state of Michigan, along with leaders from 6 other, what they called at that time, battleground states. And we were summoned to Washington, D.C., where we all gathered, and we started strategizing about an election integrity plan for these states where we know the most fraud and cheating and corruption was happening. So Ron, why don't you explain to everybody what the original meeting was about, who was involved with Cleta Mitchell and CPI, how did that come about, and then what developed with the election protection team here in Michigan, along with those other states that we met with, the leaders from the other states we met with. I'll let you start and kind of explain what that was all about and what we accomplished.
Well, you know, we weren't even included in the original invitation to the summit. I had just read about the summit based on the results that had happened in the state of Virginia in 2021, and that they believed they had created a template that could certainly change the trajectory of certain states and also recognize what was happening in our election systems, or I guess you could say what is not happening as far as the participation of conservatives in helping to count the votes in their own community, looking over the shoulder, holding people accountable, and really just being a part of the process. So when I spoke with Cleta Mitchell from CPI, I said Michigan needs to be included in this. And of course, they invited us, but we didn't just go to Stand Up Michigan people at all. We reached out to those individuals and other organization leaders and those that were already involved in election integrity and invited them to come along with us. So people from the Conservative Coalition, people from all different groups in Michigan were invited. And I think we had a team of, 6 or 8 people. But the other great thing is we had also connected with, and it gave us the opportunity to connect with Matthew Seifried, who was our election integrity director through the RNC for the state of Michigan. And we invited him. And thankfully, Josh Finley, who's his boss, had supported all of their state directors that were included in this summit to come to Washington. And this was the first week of January. I literally flew out of where we were on a vacation and flew directly to DC in order for us to be there. It was an incredible event that kind of kicked off what it is we needed to do. But what we recognized right away as we came home is no one wanted to participate or volunteer to be a part of the GOP. And we hear so much about the GOP itself, whether it's the Michigan or the National Republican Party, for instance. But that is the operation that we have to go through and utilize in order for us to participate in serving in elections. You're either Democrat or Republican. You have to identify there. And so we created and helped create the Michigan Election Protection Team, which, by the way, ended up being 29 organizations that joined together and signed on, utilizing their logo both at a state and national level, that created a logo and a brand and began spreading the word around the state that we wanted to recruit 6,000 people from all organizations, sending out the same message to recruit people to begin to being educated and follow that right through. And we'll cover what happened in the primaries and the election later. But Stand Up Michigan was able to recruit the largest number by far of any organization of people who participated in this. And I want to give you credit. Many of you that are watching or will watch this participated in your community in some way, shape, or form and got educated and have knowledge you didn't have before. And we are now extending that. That wasn't, again, for a specific election. It wasn't for a primary or a general. This was a change in structure so that we're going to create task forces moving forward. And we'll talk about that as we look at 23 and 24. But that was in the first week of January and made a huge impact over the course of 2022.
Yeah, and basically what we were doing was we were having to overcome the deficiencies from the Republican Party because the Republican Party had not ensured that we had one Republican election worker, poll challenger, absentee counting person overseeing the chain of command, the chain of custody, the entire election process. The Republican Party had paid no attention to that. And so we had thousands of Democrat workers to hundreds of Republican workers. And this is how the fraud was able to happen. And it was a very intentional thing over decades has built up to it. So we started from a standpoint of coming from way behind and having to sort of build that up. And we recruited almost 5,000, I believe, was the number of new Michigan election workers, poll challengers, those who were watching and overseeing the absentee counting boards. So we did an incredible job. You did an incredible job. We just gave you the platform with which to step in and say, I'll do it. And then the training, of course, and staffing. So we know there was fraud and cheating, but it wasn't nearly as much as it has been in the past because you were all working, you were watching. Just the presence, we know just the presence of thousands more workers was a big deterrent in this particular election. So even though we didn't get, every success and every win that we wanted, we know we made a big dent in this problem. And it's going to take time. This is not going to change. We're not going to correct and right all the wrongs in one election season. But we're making great progress, and thanks to you who stood up and decided to participate. So great job, everyone. All right, then moving on, we decided to get involved in a national campaign, and really we're responsible for the creation of this with some others on the national level because it was an election season and a primary election season, not just in the state of Michigan, but all across the country. Ron was very close with and working closely with some of those on the marketing side of things and helped to develop a national campaign called Choose Freedom. So Ron, why don't you explain where that came from, how this developed, and what the goal was? If you remember, starting with the truckers convoy, it's kind of where this developed and came from.
Well, after the truckers convoy happened, it was a very patriotic thing crossing Canada, but America is not Canada. And many truckers and individuals thought, well, why isn't America doing this? Why aren't we, understand they have one or two main highways that crossed and people joined on one issue, one way to go. And what we saw was there were many groups that were wanting to do a convoy in America. And they were doing them at a time that if you remember, well, it's continued, but certainly our store shelves were empty. The supply chains were broken. The containers were offshore. All of those things were happening in America. And of course, we depend heavily on our truckers to carry those goods and services. Over 3 million independent truckers that do that on a daily basis. And so what we had recognized was if we were to try and mimic what happened there and break off of our daily routine, and the truckers were simply to go protest and complain across the country, that conservatives would be blamed, that they would be instead of being a patriotic movement, it would be more of a MAGA movement. And that was kind of conversations that happened. And we knew that it would be hijacked and we would get the blame for the empty shelves and whatever it was. So we were trying to find a way to have people be involved in this process, not necessarily through traveling across the country in one long convoy, but being able to spread a message on an everyday basis as they carried the goods and services to the American public. And so we worked with a team of very, very intelligent, experienced messaging and marketing group across the country and developed the Choose Freedom brand and the Choose Freedom logos. And the concept was you can have an American flag and a Choose Freedom message as you do your work. And if you want to have localized convoys, and there certainly were some regionalized, it takes it away from a message that is attached to a specific political party, for instance, and it then is spreading a message of freedom and liberty and not allowing them to, again, pigeonhole us into that. We quickly realized that they were not organized in these cross-country convoy issues. So we pulled back the launching of this on a national basis and decided instead to implement it into certain areas in primaries and in elections, but really to set the stage for this being the message that we're going to carry through in 23 and 24. Because understand that the left has gone so far. They are so progressive. They have become much more socialist, communist than they have democratic. And that we have such a void that we can fill, but it always begins with the ability for us to choose freedom. And so we're going to use that, and we're going to embrace that message because it will resonate with people of all backgrounds, all ideologies that are outside of the very fringe left wing, which, by the way, controls that section of the party. And so you're going to hear a lot this year about the Choose Freedom Initiative. We have implemented it in many ways in Michigan, but we've just dabbled in it. But it is going to become a focus for 2023.
And many other states during their primaries embraced this as well. We had Wisconsin candidates, Minnesota candidates, I know Virginia. We had many other states embracing this. And a lot of those that we were working with different candidates in many different states across the country were holding their own Choose Freedom rallies. And they were given the logos because, it's not us. Choosing freedom is not just us. We don't own it. So we were sharing this and encouraging them to, hold their own Choose Freedom rallies, because really what this does is it says this candidate right here is a Choose Freedom candidate, and they are committed when they get to office to protecting and defending your individual rights and liberties. That's what a Choose Freedom candidate is. So that started to spread, and you're going to see it more and more as we get towards 2024. So that's a very exciting campaign. I want to move on now towards some of the big successes that we have had in the courts. So I know some of this happened before Danielle joined us. So Danielle, we'll pull you back into some of these conversations in just a minute here. But we had a lot of court cases that were starting to come about in 2020 because of the lockdowns and the draconian measures that many of these governors were taking. And the courts were so, of course, corrupted. They were not meeting in person. They would not hear the cases. They pushed them out into 2021 and 2022. So in 2022, we started to finally have these court cases being heard in person, and we had wins all across the nation. Myself and Kristen Megan, my colleague, many of you have seen our videos. We are both professional industrial hygienists and occupational and health professionals. That's our background. So many of you have heard our videos and have watched and have learned. We've tried to provide resources and educational content to inform you and actually the proper ways to go about handling this type of a pandemic. And so many of you have been educated by watching us and following us. And we were testifying for the last part of 2021 and all throughout 2022 in these court cases. And we saw doctors' licenses being restored. State agencies were actually revoking doctors' licenses, claiming they were putting the public at great risk simply for practicing medicine, which they are licensed through the state to do. I mean, it was crazy. There were so many of these crazy court cases going on, children being denied kidney transplants and things like this, just simply because they were not vaccinated with an experimental who knows what, right? Because the ingredients were never provided to anybody. So we started having some really great wins, and I'm very proud to have been able to testify as an expert witness in some of those cases. And then, of course, culminating at the Supreme Court, Kristen and I were able to provide our written briefs, and we heard Attorney Scott Keller, the lead attorney on that case, read the merits of the case that we had provided. And ultimately, we stopped the Biden administration from weaponizing the agencies of OSHA and the EPA from implementing sweeping permanent mandates on all businesses in the United States, all businesses over 100 employees, I should say, that would have affected almost every single employee in the US. So we were able to prove that the Biden administration was outside of their lane. They were outside of their authority. They did not have the authority to do what they were trying to do. So we stopped that. And then we actually held these agencies in check, which was a really great win for freedom. Because when you have two major regulatory agencies of OSHA and the EPA who the court said were acting with extreme overreach, is what the court said. We now have that precedent established. Moving forward, we're going to start seeing more and more cases as they come up before the Supreme Court based on some of this overreach and the abuse of power. We're now going to start seeing, that is one of the things that Ron and I have talked about for 2023. These cases take a long time, and they're not being heard. The judicial system has been corrupted. They're not wanting these things to go in front of a judge, but it's starting to happen now, and we're going to see a lot more of it in 2023. And we're going to continue to see wins because we have now established through professional expert testimony and establishing the proper chain of command and authority through Congress or through the executive branch or the judicial branch. We've now established that, and we're going to get win after win after win. That's my prediction for 2023, because we've now had so many wins, and a lot of times people don't hear about these things. So we wanted to recap and share those things with you, and it's been an honor and a pleasure to be part of that as a Stand Up Michigan leadership team. So then we, right after that, right on the heels of that testimony, we put on a industrial hygienist and multidisciplinary support summit. This is an America's Frontline Summit, and we gathered 9 of the most highly credentialed experts in the field of exposure science and preventive health. And we had to do this with a high level of secrecy because they're now on to us and silencing us, and we can't get anything out. They were shut down. Our live feed would have been interrupted. And so we did this in secret at a secret location. We invited our legislators to come, and many of them did come, including many of the new freshman legislators that we are working very closely with, and we are very excited about, who are going to be fighting for you in office, whether it's in the House or the Senate. Many of those good new elected officials came to this summit and have committed to working with the professionals to do things properly moving forward in the event of any emergency. So we've learned a lot, we've educated a lot, and this summit was a 5.5-hour summit that we have available to you on the Stand Up Michigan website and on the Choose Freedom Rumble channel. And I'm trying to share that as well to get the information out to people through alternative social media sites as well. So we had some really big wins, some really exciting things, and it's really awesome to be part of the solutions across this country and educating people and empowering you, the people, with the correct information to be able to stand up and fight this on your own. So that's been great. So now I want to switch gears just a little bit, and I want to pull Danielle into some of these conversations because we need to talk about the power of the people at the local levels where politics really happens. And it almost doesn't matter what happens in DC and in Lansing if we get good people elected into our local county governments, our local city councils, and our township boards, because we, the people, can put protective measures in place, even at a local county or city district, city area, to protect. It doesn't matter what Governor Whitmer or the crazies in DC decide to do. We can actually control and protect in our local areas. And this is what we've seen a lot of. And Danielle, coming out of the position of being the executive director for a local county GOP, has seen firsthand, up close and personal, what the power of the people looks like in the local counties. So Ron and Danielle, I'm going to let you guys get into this, what we have done at Stand Up Michigan through our local county chapters that have been very influential in the local counties. And then Danielle, what you have seen and what your work has included as well.
Well, we're so thankful and privileged to have Danielle be a part of this organization. We knew that between what we were doing on a national basis as well as trying to run this organization, that we had to have somebody who could relate directly as a mother, as a person who's in a local community, trying to restore and preserve those freedoms that we talk about. And Danielle fit that perfectly with her experience and with her current, lifestyle, where she's at in her walk. And so she has really embraced this. And Danielle, I'd just like to have you tell both where you, not only, of course, like say where you came from, but what you've seen over this last 8 months in working with the counties and what impact you see this happening and how people should get involved.
Working with the county chapters has been amazing. Like you've mentioned, I have come from a background with the GOP that includes people that have been working within politics and kind of maneuvering around this environment for a while. And working with these county chapter groups has been inspirational. These are regular, everyday people who saw something going on and they wanted to make a difference in their local community. And so they come from that perspective. They don't have any hidden agendas. They just want their local communities to be the best they can. They may have children or grandchildren, and they want them to thrive in this country that they were able to thrive in, that they were able to enjoy the freedoms and liberties that we've always seen. And so it's been amazing to see these individuals and their communities and the members that come out and support. Everyone is busy. Everyone has something going on. As you mentioned, I have a small child. Before 2020, I very much was in that world of being a mother to a young child, kind of doing all those mom things and those family things. And then March of 2020 hit, and that was life altering for me as an individual. I think for many of us it was. I had a child who was halfway through kindergarten. We were going through all of those exciting times and getting used to school and meeting his teachers and getting involved. And that time hit, and it was, as I mentioned, life-changing for me. I realized that it is important as an individual to be involved in your local community. You can't hold anyone accountable if you're not part of it or participating in some way. And so it's been wonderful. I've gotten to many of the county chapter meetings, not all of them. And I look forward in 2023 to becoming part of many more of the organizations and seeing how they operate.
So tell us a little bit, because one of the things that we've always said is we're more of an umbrella organization. It's not about us creating something for ourselves. It's about either creating something that doesn't exist, a program or a plan or a strategy, but it's also about recognizing plans that already exist, information that's out there, programs that exist, and trying to draw them in to offer them to the people all the way down to a local community. Tell us a little bit about your experience the last few months with FreedomWorks and how they have tied into both what you've seen from them as an organization. They came out of a grassroots group. Also, they support grassroots organizations, but their new leader of grassroots development came out of a grassroots organization like ours out of Arizona in Marissa Hamilton. And they are now getting involved in Michigan. And part of that is because of you and you attending meetings that they participated in. Tell us a little bit about that and what you see for 2023 with them.
Yes, FreedomWorks is a wonderful organization. I've had the opportunity to spend time with their leaders both here in Michigan and then also in DC. They have many connections within the federal government. They also really do a great job of building their team, and it involves people from every arena, from every state, from every aspect and area of expertise. And they want to invest in local communities in states across the country to kind of work from the ground up rather than focusing on that federal level that we kind of all get consumed by, wondering what's going on and who's who and who's the players. They want to get involved on the local level. They are coming with major resources, programs that they've developed by researching what actually helps individuals who aren't necessarily experts in the field, but want to get involved. And I am so excited to work with this organization in 2023. They are very excited to get involved with our groups. They see Stand Up Michigan, as you mentioned, as an umbrella organization that then we can be trained under them and become resources for other individuals and other organizations.
One of the things you mentioned, and I think it's important that you really touch on at this point, is going to be that there are a lot of mothers and young family members out there who are just trying to make it through all of these struggles and their job and coaching their kids and going to church and doing the things that a lot of conservative family members do. But I just want you to really talk for a minute about challenging the people that are exactly where you're at in identifying how necessary it is that they devote a certain amount of time to organizations like ours in their own local community and spreading the word and the knowledge and information we provide them to make their communities stronger, to be the solution for the problems that exist where they live.
Yes, it's so important that we all get involved. I know we're busy. I know we've got a lot going on. My son has something every single day after school. Plus, we have homework. We all have a list of things that we can say we're so busy with. But ultimately, it is about getting involved. It is about having a hand in what's going on. We all see what's happening. We all experienced 2020, the pandemic, the aftermath of elections and decisions that have been made. And I just cannot stress how important it is that we all get involved, whether it's getting involved like I am, working for an organization, or just attending meetings. We all have strengths, and we all need to bring them to the table, because this is something that's so much bigger than us, and our organizations really need our support.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that real quickly, because many of you who have watched me, watched my videos, or you've seen me on stage at a rally, you have heard me say that I call myself an accidental activist, because I was like Danielle. I was raising my kids. I had 3 kids at home. I was running a business, and I was minding my own business when the government decided to hijack my profession, basically. And that's why I stood up, and I just couldn't keep my mouth shut, and I had to get involved. But the thing is, and the message that I want to piggyback off of with what Danielle said was, we are all busy. We all have kids. We all have families. We all have jobs, and we're struggling with inflation and things like that. So now some of us are working 2 jobs. But at the same time, you have to realize that we all must become activists in our own communities. If we care about our freedoms, if we care about our state, if we care about our local communities, our children's schools, our churches, what's happening in this state and this nation, we can no longer just go back to sleep and, do the things that good conservatives should be doing, right? Taking care of our kids and our families, working our jobs, being on the PTA, being involved in school, youth group with kids, whatever that is. Yes, those things are good and important, but we are going to have to understand that the reason that we are in this situation that we are in is because the left doesn't typically, the progressive left that's driving all of this, doesn't live the typical conservative lifestyle that we live. And so they devote their time and their energies to those very things, to their causes. And they've got a lot more organizations and groups that are very action oriented than we do as conservatives, because we're so busy doing the things that good conservative people do. So we have to understand, we've got to wake up. We've all got to get involved. We're going to have to carve out some time and be willing to sacrifice, because freedom is not free, guys. It is not free. That means you're going to have to sacrifice of some of your time and some of your money to reclaim ground that we have lost, and then retain that for the future. And so I've had to give up things. I know Danielle and Ron, we've all given up things as far as our time, our money, the things that we focus our energy and our attention on now are a little different, because we have very important work to do. And if we all just get involved in our local communities, we will turn this state around and this nation around very quickly. And that's our goal for 2023. So moving forward, we have covered most of what we've done in 2022. I do want to talk about the bus tour. We got involved with the primary elections because the Michigan GOP was not supporting their own candidates, and people were not getting involved, and it was a little crazy here in Michigan. And so we figured, as an organization with a lot of influence, that we need to do what we can do to help these candidates. In addition to the candidates that we also had some ballot initiatives that we were very, very concerned about. And so we, as a grassroots group, reached out to the other leaders around the state of Michigan and other organizations to roll up our sleeves. And we said, the Michigan GOP is not doing it. The RNC is telling people not to donate to Michigan, for crying out loud. So I guess it's up to us, we the people. So we put together the bus tour, and I'll let Ron talk about that a little bit more, about what we did and the influence and the impact that, even though we lost some of those big races and the ballot initiatives, we made a huge difference that all of a sudden turned the eye of those on the national level that were originally telling people, I don't worry about Michigan, Michigan's a lost cause. We actually were able to put Tudor Dixon, our gubernatorial candidate, within striking distance of Whitmer, when before the gap was ridiculous. And that was because of you, because of the people, because of what we had done. So imagine if we had had the RNC and the Michigan GOP backing. Imagine if they had been behind us and giving money, right? What we actually could have done with that. So Ron, why don't you explain what that was all about and what we accomplished?
Well, the first thing is I think is to know that the purpose of it was really its name. It was empowering families and protecting children, and our goal
Mhm.
was to find and identify with people and get them to come out and understand that the power was in their hands. That to empower our families, we have to protect our children, and that included, of course, highlighting the fact that our entire slate of candidates for all offices all the way down to state school boards and local races, we're all fighting for the same ideological principles and freedoms and liberties that we care about. And we were educating and bringing in bigger and bigger crowds. By the time it was over, they were packed venues. Despite the weather that we're facing in the fall. But what it really did, again, was it gave them an ability to come together and speak not just to smaller groups individually, but to a larger group with many of them speaking. And then it was spawned, but between that, it kicked off even another bus tour that individual candidates like Tudor had that literally said, this is working, let's make this even bigger. And I think, again, the only reason that we didn't prevail in some of these races and looking back is because the left is playing a game differently than we are in elections. They had huge amounts of get out the votes and mail-in votes and absentee applications and voting that were already done. They were spent millions of dollars attacking both our candidates and these proposals before we even finished a primary in August. That's what happens when you are an incumbent. And we have never had in Michigan since the 1980s an incumbent ever be defeated at a governor level. And when you do have $30-some million in the bank and a candidate isn't even chosen until the 2nd of August, it's almost impossible to both hire a staff, raise money, and then begin to spend that money, especially for name recognition. Because in Michigan, what we know, as it is across the country, is it takes millions and millions of dollars for people to even know who you are. Many of you that watch this pay attention to politics on a daily basis, but the majority of regular, everyday people do not. They don't live in this arena. And we want to throw everybody and lump everyone into our level of understanding. And that simply is not going to win elections for us. So what we've done is we've set a foundation that has been set. And I'll just carry them right off that. The one thing we recognized before the primary was that no one, it was an article in the Detroit News that said over 80% of the people of Michigan, our own Republican electorate, did not know our candidates for governor. Now, that's because none of them were in political life before. None of them had any experience, no name recognition to speak of. And they came from all over the state with varying backgrounds. And it was important that our people at least understand, because we knew that when we voted in the primary, that someone was likely to win with 20 or 30%, and people wouldn't know the other one if they happened to know the one lived near them or the one that came from a background that they were understood or knew about. And so we did these interviews with the candidates, extensive hour-long interviews that asked them to give background, who they are, their upbringing, what they did for a living, and then how they got involved in politics. And every single one of them came from a grassroots background. Every one of them was a Christian. Every one of them had a plan to carry Michigan forward. They were a lot more alike than they were not alike. But it was important that our people understood so that whoever prevailed, that we would quickly at least be able to know there or go back and watch the video and know who won and more about them, so that we could tell our neighbors about what the candidate was, because we could not allow the media, especially social media, to define who our candidates are or what they stand for. And so that was our goal. And originally, we wanted to try and get 20 or 25,000 people to watch these videos. We knew that it would be people who really were interested and have them share it with others. But I just checked last week as we were preparing for this. And do you know that of the 5 candidates, and I have had people come up to me over the last month at a grocery store even, and one was at a restaurant and said, I just want to thank you that those videos you did were the most important thing for me and my family. I got to know all of those people, and I know them now better than I ever knew them from before. But collectively, those videos of the 5 candidates were viewed over 260,000 times. The lowest one was almost 50,000 views, and the largest one was about 60,000. But they were all kept in our Rumble channel, the Choose Freedom Rumble channel. They're still there for people to see if you'd want to watch them. But the real point is that we have had an impact in such a big way And a lot of these ideas come to us based on a need that we see that exists. And of course, it is our ability to connect and to reach each other. Censorship is beyond anything you could comprehend. A couple of years ago, as I mentioned, it seemed as if our censorship was just because of us being a far right-wing conservative organization. And so we've been deleted and deplatformed, demonetized, and all those things. But now you're seeing it in your own feed, your own inability to communicate. And that is the reason for Danielle. It's the reason for local chapters. And it's the reason that our entire focus going forward is going to be less time on social media, less time on Facebook and Twitter. If you look at your screen time every week, we're going to ask you to spend a portion of that time talking to someone at your own local cafe, your own church, the water cooler, the soccer field, and sharing with them the good news and how they can get involved too. It's a year of outreach, not a year of constantly reflecting on the past or the anger that we feel exists because of the people that have been elected.
Yeah, and that is so important because we have actually built some incredible tools and resources that do not exist anywhere else in the country for you to be able to advertise your business and have a reach that you know is very targeted that doesn't even exist on the internet. And we have very good analytics for you to follow and to see what kind of reach am I getting? What kind of ROI am I getting? If you go to standupmichigan.com on the Patriot Business Directory, you can advertise your business right now for free and get very specific targeted reach by county. I mean, we have built some incredible things as far as email. MailChimp was censoring all of our emails. And then now we know that all the email platforms around the country, all the conservative groups that are using, their emails are not going to inboxes. They're going to spam and junk. So they're not even able to communicate with their people. It's getting so intense. We have built our own email system that has a very close to 100% delivery rate. And we have done the beta testing on this, and we know we can now start licensing what we have built as a software system, basically, to other conservative organizations. And you are able to start communicating with those within your own county, advertise your businesses. This is something that we are just getting off the ground, but it's gone through the testing and it works. It's there. We have other organizations, very large national organizations and leaders, even from media organizations, who have looked at what we have built and said, this is incredible. This doesn't exist anywhere. This is exactly what conservative groups need. And we have built it. We have spent a lot of time and resources building this proactively since 2020, seeing what was coming. So it's now there for you to get involved. And I just want to encourage you. But like Danielle said, and like what you've seen from my life and Ron's life, we all need to get involved. We all need to start talking to people the old-fashioned way again, at the dinner table, around the water coolers, at church, at school. It's going to be word of mouth. They cannot stop us. They will not stop us. And they cannot enslave us if we all stand up and just commit to doing our part and doing what we can do. So those are my closing thoughts from the year. I'm going to throw it to Ron and Danielle. If you guys would like to give a few closing thoughts. Danielle, why don't you go first, and then we'll let Ron finish this out.
A few closing thoughts for me are that I'm very excited about 2023. I think we have the opportunity, like Ron and Tammy have both mentioned, for outreach, creating more chapters, growing the chapters that already exist. Currently, we have 19 active chapters. Those range from the Upper Peninsula all the way down to the Ohio border, both water's edge on the sides there, and everything in between. And so I would go to standupmichigan.com. There's a tab there that says counties. Find your active county. If there isn't one in your area and you're interested in starting a chapter, you already have kind of a small group together. Maybe it's a church group or a mom's group or a parents group or some group that's already organized, or a group of friends that are interested. Go ahead and get in touch with us. And we have many resources. We're here to support you. You won't be alone. And let's get going. I'm excited for 2023.
Again,
Yes,
our
we're
strategy,
excited to have you.
yeah, and our strategy has not changed. It has deepened. Many of the things that we have invested in over this last year or so are proving to be more important than when we developed them. I think that's a God thing. As many of these things, as we mentioned to you are. And there are several things that we need you to do. And in the description of this video, wherever you find it, we'll put both the link to standupmichigan.com. That's easy. You can sign up there. There's no need for a password, anyone. So once you put in your email, either identify it or you'll get added to your email list. The other thing you'll do is identify by county. So you would get a county email, a local information from your county if there is one. We'll also put Danielle's email in here. If you have a small group, and like we mentioned, it could be a parent group, it could be a single cause group, it may be a group for education, a group for election integrity, or for whatever it might be, freedom and liberty, Christianity, whatever it is that you're working on, we've got to collectively share that information with others in your community that might have interest in other causes. That's what a Stand Up Michigan chapter will do for us. And we're looking for leadership. Very small chapters is all we need to start with in each community. And so we'll put Danielle's email in the description. We also have our own social media area that we don't have to worry about censorship, and that's our local community. And I'll just click on that here so you can see it on the bottom. This is standupmichigan.locals.com. You can support us there. You can also join there and begin to post whatever stories you want to post. We try and keep our information and certain videos there that we know won't get shared because of shadow banning on other platforms. You can also follow our videos at Choose Freedom. Again, it's Choose Freedom on Rumble. So just search for Choose Freedom. And we're beginning to move towards the Choose Freedom initiative. So you're going to see certain things on our multimedia platform that are going to be links to stories and information and news. Yes. Also podcasts, ours, and ones that are trusted that you should be listening to. If you're listening to those, we'll give you information from calendar and events that are happening, as well as overall information on county apps and county chapters and what's happening there. All of this is censorship free. All of this is off of big tech. So we don't need to worry about your information or anything that you say there being shared with anyone else. It's vital that we have the ability to stay connected and communicate. But most importantly, we need you to get involved in your own community. This, again, doesn't mean you have to just go to meetings. It means that you need to listen to the things that we're going to share with you and the examples that other people have. And just as if you were a newborn Christian who is sharing the excitement of the changes in your life, you need to share the information about being free and living free in 23. You're going to hear more about that soon. But every day you wake up, you need to decide, I am going to live free. I am choosing freedom for myself, for my family, for my children. And I'm going to share that with the people that I run into from the time I leave my house until the time I turn out the light at night. Because that's what's going to change our community. It's what's going to change our state and our nation. And it's what's going to preserve. The most important thing is what is left behind when we're gone. Because it won't be an election and a machine and a brokenness and the anger that we see off of so many social media things. It's going to be the impact you had on the people around you. It starts with your own family, and it goes from there to every single person you run into. Those will be the stories that will be left behind for the next generation to carry on the torch of freedom and liberty, and most importantly, save people for all eternity. Have an absolutely great new year, and we look forward to working with you, getting involved. We appreciate you all. God bless. Have a great day.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.